Previously on the Game On podcast.
Mate, I have to ask, just going back to your umpiring and obviously all the grounds you umpired at, was there a favourite ground that you enjoyed umpiring at, not only from the ambience but also hospitality and the players?
I mean, I was once I started, I really wanted to umpire a test on Adelaide Oval, and I got that in that India test. That's the only one I did. I did 7 in Australia, and then I couldn't umpire in Australia anymore, so I did 88 overseas. But 7 of those I did at Galle. The southern tip of Sri Lanka is a beautiful fortress on the headland. And right down on the southern tip of Sri Lanka, it's a beautiful location, and the sea is visible around the fortress, and it's a pretty little ground. I remember my first test was there in the year 2000. I umpired with Pete Malcom, a local umpire, and honestly, I came off and I was absolutely exhausted. The amount of spin that Murley and his cohorts were getting was just phenomenal. I remember saying to Peter, this is not the game that I've been umpiring in Australia. This is like a different sport. In the first session of play, there'd be 4 fieldsmen gathered around the batter, and they would all be within spitting distance, and the ball would be turning at right angles, clouds of dust coming up every time the ball pitched, appeals every third delivery, it seemed. Yeah. It was a really hard workout. But I umpired there before and after the tsunami.
I was going to ask that. Yep. Yeah.
And I believe 160,000 people perished in that area, or very nearby, and it was devastated. The fortress only had one entry, and that was on the land side, the inland side, and anyone inside the fortress was actually quite safe. The tsunami swept by on 2 sides and just completely swamped the cricket ground, possibly to 10 or 20 or 15 feet. It was a massive wash. There was an English schoolboy cricket team about to play. I think it was 9:25 in the morning, and they were just about to go out on the field when the alarm went up, and they all scrambled into the grandstand and got as high as they could. And I believe one of the English lads had a father who was still sitting on the team bus, and that bus was just swept away. Wow. And I'm not sure where it was discovered in time later on, but 160,000 people perished. But those people were just so resilient. They love their cricket down there too, just like they do in India, and they're very respectful. They're always very colourful. There's chanting, there's singing, there's drums, there's music going on all the time, and it's just an exciting place to be, especially if the Barmy Army happen to be in town with the English boys, and then you actually get to hear your name come up a few times in the Barmy Army song. But so Galle is my special place. 7 test matches. I did enjoy it. The groundsman there came to me the first day with a bottle of Jacobs Creek Chardonnay. He knew I liked a white wine, and I umpired 7 test matches. Every single day of every single test, he would arrive after stumps with a bottle out of his fridge of Jacobs Creek Chardonnay. So they looked after me pretty well, and I really am still very, very fond of that place.
Sportscast SA presents Game On. Game On. South Australians' destination for everything sports. Local, national, and international sports. AFL football, soccer, basketball, golf, baseball, tennis, cricket, and any other sports played in this wide world. And we're going to have a blast doing it. So sit back, relax, and let's do this thing. Welcome to Game On.
Welcome to another episode of Game On. Pete here again, joined by Malcom, and Daryl Harper was fantastic last week, just giving his insights into not only his favourite ground, but some of the stuff that went on, obviously, during that period.
Entertaining and educational.
Absolutely.
My summary of Harps last week.
Obviously we couldn't include everything in the previous episode, but he did also talk about Sachin Tendulkar and how he was such a gentleman and made sure he checked on him during some of the riding that had been going on over there. And obviously, as part of the gall tests, he certainly enjoyed his time there. And a bottle of Chardonnay is not a bad way. And they did their research, didn't they, knowing that it's a South Australian drop. All right.
I'm sure Harps delivered well and truly in terms of drinking it.
I bet it did too.
Around the grounds.
Today on Around the Grounds, we're going to have a bit more of a look at some of the AFL practice matches and some questions about the AFL, the cricket internationally, the tennis, but we're going to kick off with the soccer, the Matildas, mate.
Yeah, they've come good. Like, they had that poor patch last year, but it looks like things might have been sorted out a bit. There was, a bit of internal turmoil in that. And, yeah, so they beat Jamaica in the Cup of Nations final, during the tournament against Spain, you put a 7-0 result behind them.
Yeah, I think that was very important, obviously, for their progress into the World Cup. That was probably one they really, really needed to put to bed.
Yeah, just a bit of, as we know, how much of sports played above the ears, and vital improvement. So before the World Cup,
they looked very sharp too. That was the other thing. They were scoring quite regularly. Teams seemed to be gelling really, really well, and the cohesion was fantastic. And Sam Kerr was just her usual self, really.
It was funny to have a team where we were in soccer, or world game football.
Yep, football. Yep.
As far as I'm concerned, still soccer. We're a genuine chance.
It's exciting, and it's coming here to Australia, and
huge.
And the Cooper Stadium redevelopment is all but finished now. Yep. Looks absolutely magnificent. Probably missing a roof, but we can't have a roof on everything. But they look like they've done a really good job down there, and it's going to be an exciting period. And just announced this week was the Australian teams heading over to England to play a couple of friendlies.
Yeah, so some promising advancements there. In terms of a roof, I don't think it rains enough here personally. Sydney, yes.
Yes. Yeah, we might talk about that one a little bit later. Could be a chance. We move on. Last week, we did Port Adelaide's best 23 for 23, and we'll have a look at Adelaide this week, mate.
Yeah, I think Adelaide's probably a little bit harder, and there's a few more. I think they're bottom of their list. It's toss a coin with a fair few. Few too many honest battlers still. I still think there's a fair bit of list turnover yet. So we'll see how we go.
All right, we'll start with your backline, mate.
I've gone backline of Doty, Butts and Parnell. I'm very firm that you've got to play a small defender.
Mm-hmm.
That I can't feel that, they can't just play Malira back there and think, or Sloan, whatever. I think it's actually got to be a specialist small defender.
Yep.
So,
well, I had exactly the same, but I did have Miller in the back pocket. Yeah. But you're right. Parnell's probably one that I've got on my supplementary list, which we can talk about as we go along. What about the half back line, mate?
I've gone Dawson, Murray, Smith, or Dawson, Worrell, Smith again. I think that'll be decided in the next 2 weeks. I reckon at the moment that's probably a toss of the coin.
Yep.
I think the half-back flankers, I'd be surprised if those two didn't line up on the half-back flanks in the first round.
Yep.
But Worrell or Murray.
Okay. Heads or tails, yeah. I've got Chase Jones, Murray and Smith. Yeah. I think Smith's going to be that one that changes maybe a little bit with Laird.
Yeah, he may.
Laird, maybe with Sloan as well.
Maybe.
Possibly. Maybe. Yep. Your centre line, mate?
Saligo, Berry, and look, I've gone for a bit of a dark horse in terms of the other wing, Pedler. Pedler's got to be in the 18 for me for Adelaide to advance.
Yes, I had exactly the same. I had Jordan Dawson, Sam Berry, but you're right, I had Pedler on the other wing. I think he's shown enough last week in the internal trial game to say that he's going to be getting some pretty good game time.
I've seen enough of him at SANFL level. I'm a fan. Half forward line.
Yep.
I've gone Rochelle, Thilthorpe, McAdam, and full forward line, Rankin, Walker, Fogarty.
Okay, I've gone Saligo, Walker, McAdam as the half-forward line, and Rankin, Fogarty and Rochelle.
Yep.
But again, a bit like Port Adelaide last week, there's going to be a lot of interchangeable players depending on matchups. Also, who's going to be changing on the ball a little bit. What about your ruck line, mate?
Oh, look, I actually hope that Thilthorpe is their first ruckman.
Yep.
I think that's the progression. That's the future. Look, I've gone Strawn. Look, I admit, I think O'Brien will be in there, which I don't agree with at all. I think he's just he's the classic honest battler. lacks any skill with palming the ball. He just hits it. It goes nowhere. His hit-outs to advantage are poor.
Yep.
So I'm Strawn, Keys, Laird in that regard.
I'm O'Brien, Laird, Keys on the same basis that I think Riley O'Brien will get the first ruck.
So do I. I think he will, but he wouldn't be in my side.
Yep. But I've got on my interchange bench, I've got Riley Thilthorpe changing as that ruck role as well. So a bit of flexibility there. Rory Sloane, McHenry and Haitley on the bench.
Yeah, I've gone Malira, Sloane, either Worrell or Murray.
Yes.
Schoenberg. I think Schoenberg will be in their side.
Yes.
And look, only purely the way they've spoken him up in pre-season in Himmelberg, but I don't think he's a certainty. I think the next 2 weeks, Max Michaelani's around the mark, and a few others. I think there's probably about 12 players vying for about 5 spots.
Okay.
I would have thought.
Well, I've got on my supplementary list of players that could possibly come in, I would have Scholl.
Yes.
McPherson, obviously when he's fit, he's been the forgotten man, but could help them down back a little bit more. Newchurch, exciting, but again you've got Rochelle and Rankin ahead of him up forward. So where does he fit? Does he fit on a wing?
Oh, look, I've seen enough of Newchurch at SANFL level. He's got to increase in terms of his involvement and got to be far better defensively, I think, for them to look at him.
Yep.
I think there's still a fair way to go there, personally.
I had Max Michaelani that, obviously his first year, father-son draft pick, could fill a role across that half-back line if they needed. Yeah,
and I will be giving him a rap later on with the Norwood film night the other night. Very impressed. Might as well do it now.
Yep.
Very impressed to see the kid who's missed out, who's got dropped from the prelim final, be in the rooms wishing everyone luck and really involved. But a lot of players, the dummies in the dirt, they've missed out.
Yep. Spat and chewy, but throwing the toys out of the cot.
Massive tick for me in that way.
And I think AFL clubs look at that kind of thing these days in that, it's not all me. It's about we. And basically it seems like he's put team first. And I think that's a bonus for the Crows, really.
Well, I was with Phil Harper at talking at a school probably a little bit, but he's very confident that he'll be 150, 200 game player.
I can certainly see it now, and we wish him the best of luck. Bit of a tough side to break into at the moment. You're right, they do have a lot of players that are that honest, hard battlers. A bit like the Sydneys of the late 90s, early 2000s, where they were very much about, being those honest, hard battlers that, don't give up a lot, but, they've got an exciting forward line, so they just need to get it forward, and this is where they just maybe one key midfielder short at the moment and a defender. So, if there's players that they can pick up over the next year or two, they're going to be quite dangerous.
I'm disappointed they've discarded Crouch still so much. For mine, he still gets a lot of the ball. I don't think Laird's a great user of it in the middle in that way either. It's not long coverage, doesn't get a huge amount of yardage in general.
Yes.
It's a truckload of the ball, and he's fantastic in that way, but I'm still not sure why they don't use Crouch in the middle and Laird at half back still. But
that was probably going to be my next question was where does Crouch fit in, and if he does fit in, where do you play him? And you've explained there you probably play him in the middle, and Laird and Smith coming off that half back line, that's pretty impressive. And Dawson slingshotting forward to Fogarty and potentially Thilthorpe.
I would personally still play Crouch before Keys. Keys for mine's just an honest battler.
Yep.
Hinge is another one who's around the mark there as well. So, as we said, there's a few players. McHenry.
Yeah.
There's a lot of toss the coins.
There are. And the trial matches are obviously going to sort of sort the men from the boys, so to speak. And it's going to be interesting to see how they do line up for round one. It seems like Matty Nix has a game plan in mind, a certain squad in mind, and look, let's just give him the opportunity. I think now is the time that you should start to see him shine.
Yeah, hopefully a little bit. And look, I'd like to see Jones play as well. I think Jones...
Chase Jones,
still used,
Yeah, and he could potentially come up on that wing a little bit.
Halfback.
Yeah, halfback. Like you said, you you put Rory Laird across that half-back line, it sort of opens it up a little bit, doesn't it? My last question for the Crows really is, will Dawson be the correct captaincy choice?
I always find kept being the selection of captain being questioned a bit amusing, because I think it's got to be something which is you only know internally.
Yep.
You really don't. From the outside looking on. And the other thing too, let's also remember, a captain's main role is coterie stuff off the ground. That's why I don't mind joint captains personally.
Yep.
It's not like they're a cricket captain and doing who decides who goes where and who bowls and bats and what position they play. So, yeah.
I'm impressed that he's been given the opportunity after being at the club for a year. He had a pretty good year by his standards, but I'm sure he'd like to have done a little bit better. But, I think you're right. Internally, they rate him.
Yeah.
I think that the players definitely would have some sort of say in it. So,
yeah.
If he's been elected by the leadership group and also by the match committee and the match staff, you'd have to say that it's a big tick.
Yeah, and also Tom Doty hasn't committed for next season, which at the moment is a real worry. It looks like the traditional, when that doesn't happen, does mean they're going back. So that may nearly put him out of the equation to some extent. So.
Is potentially losing him a bit of nail in the coffin for Adelaide's rebuild at the moment?
No, I wouldn't go that far. I don't think he's as dynamic as that. I'd like to see him used on ball a bit this year as well. So, yeah, wait and see. A
lot of flexibility with the Crows, and as we said last week with Port Adelaide, we'll see how they go after a couple of trial matches, and we wish them all the best for season 2023 and hopefully not too many injuries along the way.
No, we'll go from there.
We move on to cricket, to local cricket. We'll start off with the local stuff first. The Scorpions, they're off to a final again.
Yeah, let's start with the good news.
Yes, good news.
Couple of wins last weekend against Queensland. Made the first game 234 and got bowled out in the 47th over. I was a bit worried there, but came through and bowled Queensland out pretty and won that first game pretty convincingly.
Yep.
And then chased when Queensland got away to a little bit of a better start on the Sunday.
227 around about that. Yep.
Yeah, chased it down and wasn't totally easy, but still had a reasonable amount of command. So. Yeah, a couple of good results.
And they've got 3 players that are currently overseas at the moment in South Africa, I believe. So, that's a fantastic result. And, gee, could we be here next week with a 3rd trophy for 2023 in the cabinet for South Australia?
Oh, there's a bit of depth in the women's cricket there with the South Australia at the moment. Wish we could say the same thing with the men in that regard.
Yep.
But,
back-to-back finals. They played Tasmania last year, so there's a little bit of a score to settle from that point of view. I think we're a bit better placed this year. It feels like we're a little bit better placed.
Need Bridget Patterson to get a start and keep going, not get another 30-odd.
We'll watch that with keen interest. The broadcast will be on KO and also Cricket Australia from 1:30 on Saturday. We'll be keeping a bit of an eye on that one. I'm sure you'll be keeping a real close eye on that one.
I'll have a look.
I'll be on the greens bowling that time, but I will be checking my phone, so keep me updated, mate.
I admit I'm hosting a Payneham Past Players Day where we've got a few premiership reunions on Saturday. So,
fantastic, mate. Now, we've done the good news. Let's have a look at the bad news. The Sheffield Shield was an unmitigated disaster once again.
Oh, look, and I'm really angry with the selection. I'm spewing is my common word for it. Kelvin Smith continues in district cricket to be the gun opening batsman. For mine, he's still our best opening batsman. I still think he's a better player than Henry Hunt, and he's not been given a chance. Have sort of written him off. Cardner, because he signed a 4-year contract, has continued to play, hasn't made a run, failed again in both innings, and Nilsson pulls out on nearly the morning of the game, and they bring in Harry Mathias from Sturt. Now, Josh Barrett is the leading run scorer in district cricket this year, with over 700 runs, and he's done this consistently for years.
Yep.
For mine, and let's also remember they decided they were going to play 5 bowlers this game, and that so we were going that Tom Kelly had been left out, so we played the all-rounder at 6. Surely you go with the best batsman keeper at 7 available. Now, it's either Alex Carey. Personally, I'd play Josh Barrett before I'd play Harry Nilsson.
Yes.
So there's my thoughts.
Yep.
I don't believe it was our best side. available. And, yeah, it was a lot of angst amongst South Australian cricket.
Yep.
And it was very interesting to see Andrew Zessers actually go public and not just privately, go public and go to town, which
doesn't happen very often.
No, and it generally doesn't help that person in the end. It was interesting that he was so vocal.
Because of the heat here in Adelaide this week, I actually did get to watch some of the games on KO as well, and yeah, it just seemed like we were outclassed. Just can't hold down partnerships.
We bowled him out for 169. You've only got to bat reasonably and get 230.
Yes, put him under a little bit of pressure, and it just never happened. Mate, why can't we back it up time and time again, and what's missing? What's the missing piece of the puzzle here?
I think we've probably answered that at depth.
Yes.
And I'm sorry, selection for mine has been bizarre. I don't believe it was the best side available to play it on the weekend.
So obviously the sack of the women are doing fantastically. It seems like the selection policy or selection.
Look, it's only my opinion.
Yeah,
but
from the outside, as a non-cricket nut,
yeah,
I love my cricket, but you love it even more, so you know a little bit more about it. But what's missing between the men's and the women's game, and yeah, you're probably right. It just gets down to selection and personnel.
It's not only selection. There's some other things off ground which aren't right. Like we could go on and on about that.
But it's like we talked about the Super Bowl last week. And baseball's exactly the same, and AFL footballer seems to be the same, in that you've got to get your front of house right before the back of house performs.
Exactly.
So, and I think that seems to be where it's going at the moment with a lot of clubs. Geelong were a classic example this year in the AFL. Absolutely fantastic front of house. Their back of house performed. And that seems to be the way forward. So, all right, mate, we'll take a quick break. We'll come back after and we'll have a little bit more of a look at some general AFL. And we've got a special guest tonight, Justin Staritski.
You're listening to the Game On Podcast. We'll be right back after this short break.
Yeah, so the practice matches last week, mate. Take anything from them?
Yeah, sticking with the AFL, obviously we sat here on Thursday night knowing that Adelaide and Port were going to be playing in trials on Friday night or Friday afternoon. A lot of players rotating through, obviously, at the Crows. Some takeaways. Rankin was probably a class above. He was the one that everyone went to see. I thought Pedler was fantastic as well.
Yeah, look, he's for mine will be the Adelaide big improver for the year. Yeah, Rankin just suddenly gives him a spark and probably will keep him in some games more. Yeah, he's not going to need that many opportunities. And look, if his body holds up, he can play midfield. Look, he can. I remember he was in that under-18 side when we won the championship with Lukosius and that. And
yep.
It was a fair bit to do with, I was talking to Luke Valenti during it, and he said the guy will stand up will be Rankin, and sure enough,
that was what he did
in the first half.
There you go. Obviously, Taylor Walker looked like he's fighting fit. Sloaney got a run as well. I think they're tracking okay, but it's going to be an interesting weekend, obviously, over in Western Australia.
Yeah, they're over there for 10, 12, 14 days, basically. A little bit back and forth. Look, I probably never get too wound up on trial games. Look, I think they get West Coast in the one next week.
Yep.
Probably more of a chance there. But, yeah, look, you just want to see a bit of fluid movement and hopefully get through with no injuries, and hopefully they get a bit closer to deciding what their best 23 is.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously last week they had one team, the possibles and the probables, and one team was absolutely killing it at one stage, so they flipped the scores around, and I think that was good match simulation as well. And like you said, there are a lot of good, honest battlers, but it seems like Matty Nix is getting the team together that he wants.
Yeah, it's funny too whether, it's what we've got to discuss about the new recruits have. Look, Dowling, I commentated a couple of games he played in last year for North Adelaide, and he's above the honest battler. He's clean.
Yep.
To be reasonably smart, went at the right spots. I know a few of the, Scott Uppington and the coaches at North Adelaide rate him pretty highly.
Yep.
So I think I think Nan Curvis showed a fair bit in the SANFL finals last year. Taylor, there's seems to be reasonably happy with Bond, 007.
Yep.
So I think there is a bit there to work.
There's a bit of upside, that's true.
Yeah.
And the other thing that came across my path during the week is that the amount of South Australians that are in the Adelaide Crows at the moment, it's higher than normal.
Yeah, I don't think. I think it's more coincidence. I don't think they've deliberately targeted people for that. You know,
certainly the go home factor has been a bit of an issue, but yeah,
I'm sorry, it's not down at Alberton. They've got to judge themselves on that.
Absolutely. And the other thing with the Crows, just before we get on to Port Adelaide, so how much influence do you reckon the new recruits will have in 2023 for Adelaide?
Oh, I think there'll be positive stuff. I think they're finally getting a bit more depth. I just hope they turn guys over and have a real good look.
Yep.
Aiming for to suddenly be more around the mark next year. I still don't think they'll challenge. I don't think they'll challenge for the 8 this year.
No.
But I think they'll be. I just want to see improvement, and then to think next year we're a chance to play finals.
Is it a bit of a case of Adelaide Premiership years Mark II with how they're building the squad?
Maybe.
Couple of classy players coming back into the team.
Yeah, maybe, but they still rely a lot on Walker up forward. He's still their main key forward, really.
Fogarty's going to have another good year as well.
Thilthorpe's got to come on.
Absolutely. All right, we move on to Port Adelaide, mate. Port Adelaide had a trial on Friday night as well. Jason Horne-Francis was obviously the talking point, a bit like Rankin for the Crows. Got a little bit of a clip from Chad Corns during the week saying, he can't expect to come and dominate straight away at Port Adelaide.
Theatre, I reckon. I'm not paying much attention to that personally.
No, I think Port Adelaide have got the list now that you'd have to say they've got to be challenging for top 4.
Yeah, I think so. I think their only doubt is the key defenders.
Yep.
But Bass has always been and Bass is back. Nathan Bassett back as the defensive coach. They've moved him back again. Mm-hmm. He's always never been a person worried about height as much. That he thinks his way, positioning your body, and he probably. That does come back to his own career a fair bit.
Yep,
so,
absolutely.
Bass and I have had many a conversation over the years. So, I think they're going to be around the mark.
How important is Lysette? Because they lost him a little bit last year, and it just seemed like they just never recovered. And Aliyah's in the same boat.
Yes, maybe though. But Teakle came in, and apparently Teakle started in their first side last week. So that was a little bit interesting. Mm-hmm. There's Port think very highly of him. It is shoulder first game.
Yep.
And I know that Jeff Morris and that thought that he would have been picked earlier.
Yes.
And that helped us get Luke Sermon back. So as far as I'm concerned, I was very happy with the selection.
Win-win.
Yeah.
Yep.
So.
And Charlie Dixon, do we see him playing a little bit closer to goal, or is he still going to pinch hit in the ruck as well?
I think he'll pinch hit in ruck, but I think he'll play mainly full forward.
Yep. Any others from Port Adelaide that tickling your fancy at the moment?
I'm a Georgiadis and Marshall fan as well. Rosie and Butters and those three. I think there's a lot of excitement about Port Adelaide.
Absolutely. With Marshall and Georgiadis, how do they fit them all in? That's the question.
Yeah, it's wait and see.
Yeah. Horses for courses, maybe?
Yep, maybe.
Fantastic. Mate, Tasmania are one step closer today. The AFL announced that the stadium deal might just about be over the line.
Yeah, so it does look like it's going to happen. Look, they should have been, let's be honest, they should have been in the competition years ago.
Yes.
It's farcical they haven't been. Yeah, I think it's farcical there's still 10 teams in Melbourne, that it's really an extended VFL competition, but that's another topic.
Well, when you talk economically, I mean, really, you've got a team in Tasmania that obviously they were worried about the economics, but you're propping up teams in Melbourne as well. So, I don't quite get why they weren't in earlier. I understand potentially why it hadn't happened, but you're right. It's an exciting time for Tasmania and gives us another team to critique as we go along.
And the mail is, if they'd got Cadbury's over the line to sign a long-term sponsorship deal, it would have happened a few years ago, but oh well.
There you go. That's a piece of news I didn't know. So thank you for enlightening
the odd
me.
one.
No worries, mate. Mate. And the last one I thought would be right up your alley. The AFL announced this week 4 umpires for the upcoming season. Good call or bad call?
If they get the positioning and the changeovers right, yes, I detest the positioning as an umpire at the moment, having the umpire out so wide in the pocket. Whoever came up with that idea because they were worried about umpires and players colliding just has zero idea that happens once in a blue moon compared to having the umpire out in the crowd. And as soon as there's a switch, I don't care if you're Usain Bolt, you can't get in position.
Yes.
But the 3 umpire system, and all umpires say this privately, they're just not allowed to say it public, never worked.
Yes.
Because the 3 umpire system is a variation of the 1 umpire system. So the umpire in the centre corridor would run and work his ass off like a blue whippet, and then they'd switch over.
Right.
So it really was, if you can get the changeovers right, I thought originally when 4 said it was going to come, I was in favour of it.
Yep.
But I don't think they've got the changeovers right.
Okay.
It'll be interesting to see.
They're talking about a Z formation or a Z formation across the ground. Yeah. That's going to make it interesting.
Oh, look, because the 2 umpire system, honestly, you could come out with me now and you would pick it up within a game or 2.
Yes.
The 3 umpire system, I did it a few times, and you actually came off the ground more knackered than what I did under the 2, because the 3 umpire system, you're doing more sprints.
Yes.
If you were the person who was just a reasonably good long distance runner, your 2 umpire system was far better than 3.
My uncle did some umpiring, who does listen to our podcast up at Mount Gambier, and he'd often comment on where the umpires are moving and out of position and so on whenever I'd catch up with him for a game. But it's going to be interesting.
I won't swear.
It's going to be interesting. Do you think we're going to be over umpired, or
it comes down to personality a bit? Like someone like Ray Chamberlain is going to over umpire if he's by himself. He wants to be noticed. It's a bit bizarre. So let's just wait and see.
All right, mate. We will come back to the cricket. So the international tour of India. Your thoughts, mate? It's become a disaster of epic proportions, as I've got here on my run sheet.
Terrible. And let's remember, Australia have been lucky enough to win the toss in the first 2 games too. And it looked like at 7 for 154 after making 263, it looked like, hey, we're going all right here.
We're going all right, yeah.
And if we'd knocked them over for under 200, under 180 to 200, so you'd had a lead of 80-odd, I think that may well have been enough. But that one session of batting is the worst cricket I've ever seen. I admit, we were in Melbourne.
Yep.
Over in Melbourne, I interviewed Barmy at a lunch on Sunday, and then watching the cricket, we were all just jaws on the floor. It was pitiful.
I sat and watched the highlights. I was busy on Sunday. Sat and watched the highlights Sunday night, and I could not believe that they were sweeping as much as they were. And you'd think after 1 or 2 getting out because of that action, you'd think around the change rooms, hey, I don't think that's probably the way to go.
Let's go back to the player who dominated in India was Matthew Hayden.
Yeah,
now, he dominated on the sweep shot, but
he's taller.
No, I want to go further than that.
Okay.
That he went over to India himself. He went over to India for a month himself and batted and worked on it all himself. This absolute arrogant garbage of no warm-up games, and I'll blame every country, not just India.
Yes.
It's every country. And while we've got this thing that 2020 comps rule the world, so there's no warm-up games, and Australia to be so pig-headed since and not admit that it was an epic fail, so we'll bat in the nets in Sydney. Where's this bit of picking players from the nets? We've seen guys look like Don Bradman in the nets and bat like Benny Hill in the games, and we're picking. Agar's now it's been decided he can't bowl from the nets.
Yep. So he's come home.
It's ridiculous.
The amount of players coming home just shows that something's not quite right. And
yeah. Well, Warner's injured, so let's be fair there. I think Cummins. I suspect I hope his baby's okay.
Yes.
But we're all worried about that.
Yep.
And that's more important than cricket anyway.
Absolutely,
so, and Hazelwood's injured as well and shouldn't have gone in the first place.
Well, the Achilles was never going to heal itself.
So,
not over in India, that's for sure.
No, so, I think in that way it's probably been a mountain made out of a molehill in that way, but it's been a bit bizarre.
But everything's gone wrong. I mean, the selection for the first test was
weird,
jaw-dropping, going, hang on, how does that work? Then, obviously, the second test, they make some changes, which is fine. Bring in a guy or fly over a guy who's been playing domestically here, and you've taken Agar with you. You're jumping at shadows because of the pitches, and then you go out and sweep and all out in a session. It's just all gone wrong.
And the selection of Renshaw in the first place, like, He's not a Darren Lehman or a Michael Bevan against spin. And how they came up with this big theory that he was the gun player of spin and will leave Travis Head out.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
Travis Head top scoring, obviously, in the second second innings there.
Yeah, look, it was good, but he had to go on with it on the Sunday.
Absolutely.
First over of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. Does this signal the end of David Warner's career?
Well, it was interesting watching him bat. Like his first innings of the 12, it was a terrible 12. It wasn't 3 balls, hit him in the middle, and then nick one. Mm-hmm. He batted for quite a while, and he was just late on Sharma and that. He made Sharma look like Jeff Thompson.
Yep.
And that, the Indian quicks. So, yeah, look, he did look like the one where the eyes have gone.
Yeah.
Reflexes. Mm-hmm. And...
And we talked obviously last week about the footy and how some of the players can lose it from one season to the next. Just seems like Warner's just a step behind the 8 ball at the moment and doesn't look as sharp as he normally has been.
I remember talking to one of our previous guests in Wayne Phillips about it when Flipper got recalled, and he played a game against WA against Bruce Reid here, and he admitted himself, said to me afterwards, "Geez, man, how come I just
it's gone?
It was gone."
Yeah. All right, mate, we move on to tennis.
Yeah.
The Woodies aren't speaking terms. I thought that was an interesting piece of news that came out over the week. Mark Soderstrom, as part of his podcast, had Mark Woodford on, and I think this was during the summer season, but obviously only just released. And part of that conversation was that, he doesn't really have too much of a relationship with Todd Woodbridge anymore.
Yeah, it's a bit sad, considering they were the gun doubles team for a long time, and that is teamwork in tennis. You would have thought so. Yeah, look, something's happened. This happens,
and I think as far as what Mark Woodford was sort of saying about it is that Todd Woodbridge had decided not to play on. Woodford did want to play on for a little bit longer. He played with Jonas Bjorkman in some doubles tournaments. Now, when it comes to the Legends Tour, the Woodies Woodford wants to get back the Woodies combination, and Todd's probably not as receptive to it. So, yeah, you're right. Something has happened there, but we're hopeful for a reconciliation at some stage.
Yeah, look, it happens. Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't see Tyson Edwards and Andrew McLeod going out together ever again.
No, fair
These
enough.
things happen.
They do. Anna Dokic, she was trolled during the Australian Open. What does this world come to?
Oh, look, it's a sad world.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Unfortunately, it's not a surprise.
Yeah.
It's just the amount of crap which happens out there. And look, gone through with being hacked from Nigeria and what I've been through with that. Mm-hmm. It's bizarre. It is bizarre where the world's at.
Especially here in Australia. I mean, she represented Australia. Yes, she immigrated from another country. You'd think that Australians would show her a little bit more respect, but to hear her conversation on one of the ABC Q&A sessions, she's breaking down, going, I was just trolled, and about her weight. I mean, that's just disgusting, and it's just not right. And as sports people, we should be a little bit more supportive of our past players and past legends of the game. Yeah, all right, she didn't win a Grand Slam, but geez, she competed at the highest level and did pretty well, really, at the end of the day.
While I obviously totally agree with you, I'm buggered what else we can do, though.
Yeah, it's a hard one, that's for sure. And unfortunately, there's too many keyboard warriors at the moment. Right? All right, we move on. Last piece of tennis news. Djokovic returns to the court for the first time since the Australian Open. Addresses a few rumours about his injury during the Australian Open. There seems to be some confusion over whether it was a 3-centimetre tear or a bruising or a overstrained muscle. He's basically turned around and said, I'm not going to enter into it. I'm 100% now, or close to 100% now. He's going to play in Dubai. Strapped up during the Australian Open. Not convinced that there wasn't anything wrong, but I'm also not convinced it was as bad as what it seemed.
Let's just say I take him with a lot of salt.
All right. Well, we wish him luck over in Dubai as well, and I think he's got, from memory, an appeal with the US to play in the US because of his vaccination issues as well. So we'll see how that pans out over the next couple of weeks. All right, mate, we'll take a quick break. Once we come back after the break, we've got Justin Staritski.
The Bart.
Liking this podcast? Please like, rate, and subscribe. Past players, past legends, past legends.
Welcome back to Past Players, Past Legends, and today we have a Norwood past player, past legend. Also went on to play at a couple of VFL clubs. Justin Staritski, thanks for joining us, mate.
No problems at all, Peter.
G'day, Justin, a.k.a. Bart. We better get that over and done with straight away, Bart, because I don't think I've ever called you anything but that. Where did the Bart nickname start from originally, mate?
Right. Well, the Bart nickname came care of... I had a choice, actually. When I first started at Norwood with a surname like Staritski, they were looking for a shortened version pretty quickly. And I was offered Igor because of Igor Stravinsky.
Oh, yeah,
and I was offered Bart because of Bart Starr, who I think played for the Green Bay Packers. So that was my two choices. And so I gravitated pretty quickly to Bart.
Yes, because I think very rarely you ever called Justin. So, yes. So,
we will on this occasion for formal reasons, but it's Bart.
Right.
It's Bart from now on.
Yes, yeah.
No, I've had some decent ones. The other one was at North Melbourne. I was called Hutch from Starsky and Hutch. So
that's true.
That was the other one. So,
that's a good one.
But all derivatives of the surname.
Okay, Justin. So, junior-wise, growing up, you went to Pembroke and that so school career and starting at Norwood, mate.
Yep. Yeah. So basically, you're right. I before that, I sort of grew up in the country, I suppose. Dad was a teacher or a principal at the school, so had my time around. Grew up in Snowtown for a while and Port Lincoln, and was born in Leesondale, and then basically came back to Adelaide when I was about 12. And you're right, I started my schooling at Pembroke, and played all my school footy there, and was fortunate enough to have some pretty good coaches back then through Pembroke, and people like Robert Odie, who obviously is a bit of a legend of SA footy. So and then played what was back then the old Sandboy Cup. So had some representative at sort of Norwood in the under 15s and some of those special squads, and then moved into the under 17s probably in about 1985, I think.
Yeah, that's about right. And making your debut against West Adelaide in round 5 in 1988.
Yep. So that was a really special moment because I had a pretty long association from a family connection with Norwood. So both my grandparents were life members. My grandfather was a sort of a league delegate on the SANFL and a life member of the SANFL as well. And so and my dad Alex had played a handful of games when he was quite young before moving to the country. So there was a really strong sort of Norwood connection there, and it was a club that I'd followed all my life. And I was given an opportunity probably reasonably early as a 17-year-old to play in that game against Westies. And back then, you'd remember, Malcolm, that you pretty much sat on the bench unless something went terribly wrong and someone got dragged or someone got injured. And so I sat there for 3 quarters and then came on at Richmond Oval and, have really fond memories of it.
Fair to say that the red and blue runs through the veins, mate?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I didn't have any choice, and my kids have got no choice. It's pretty much dictated right from the word go.
Now, let's do that properly too. Your grandparents in Glad and Jack Mason, hugely respected, not only at Norwood, but as he said, in the SANFL. And also your dad, very, very highly respected in the school principal and the schooling environment in general as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that, Malcolm. Yeah, no, that's right. And Dad, and he'll be quick to let you know, he was a pretty successful coach at country level. He coached Leesondale to a couple of premierships. Snowtown certainly to some premierships as well. So really good country football. He'll tell you he should have won a male medal, but he missed out by 1 vote or something like that. But no, he was pretty handy.
Did you play any other sports as a kid?
Yes, tennis was a decision. So yes,
right up my alley as well.
No, I did. I played junior tennis. So as a kid, I think you gravitate and you go to Sapsazas and you go to the countries, and then if you're lucky enough, you get a state Sapsaza. So I played all those sort of things, and then I think by the time I was 14 or 15, I sort of had fallen out of love with the game a little bit. I'd sort of been practicing and competing for a fairly long time. And at the end of the day, I probably wasn't good enough anyhow. But I sort of moved and sort of gave it away at 15, and then moved into playing more and more footy.
Who were the top players around in that era, tennis-wise, for South Australia, that you might have come across?
It was in South Australia. There was a guy called Jason Spear who ended up playing a bit of footy for Woodville West Torrens.
Yeah,
I think I was over in Melbourne when he went and played. But certainly in terms of nationally, and this is the sort of you play them in tournaments, it'd be people like Richard Fromberg and Jason Stoltenberg and Todd Woodbridge. They were all sort of players that sort of that were around at that age.
Some fair names there, bro.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. No, it was a good time, and I was really lucky because I got to go away a lot as a kid, and that it really forms a lot of good experiences at that young age to be able to go away and go into state with teams and play, and it puts you under a bit of pressure at times, and you have to grow up a bit. But no, it was a really good experience.
And then the 89, you had a good year, 29 games. You played a fair bit of footy that year with all the Foundation Cup games and finished fourth in the BNF. So a good year then, and obviously played a large part in North Melbourne picking you in the draft.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was my best year, and I was still at uni, so you got to sleep in till 10, and so everything was footy. I was pretty fit. I got the opportunity at the start of that season. I think I'd finished the year before playing the last final. So I'd played a few games during the year and then got reselected for our last final and equipped myself reasonably well. And so I think they sort of earmarked me. Macca might have hurt his knee late in the season before. And so they'd earmarked me to play in the centre, and so Barmy gave me that opportunity, which was great as an 18-year-old, and I managed to string a few good games together that year. I'd actually been drafted the year before, and I didn't. I just mentioned I was talking to some people just before. And they asked me about that, and I said, back in those days, I didn't even know. I rocked up to the club, and someone said, "You've been drafted by North Melbourne," and so that was what it was like those days. And effectively, there was no real intention to go straight away. That's for sure. And in fact, clubs took a bit of a risk back then drafting you when you had effectively 2 years of a contract left, because it wasn't a lay down, you wouldn't necessarily go straight away over to Melbourne. And that was never my intention. And in fact, it probably got, it only really became relevant, 2 years later.
So you play 13 games in your first season, 29 in your second, and then you're off to Melbourne. What was it like going to North Melbourne, mate?
Yeah, it was really good. I mean, I had one more year after that in the SANFL, but I'd pretty much played, I think, the first 7 games and played in the city country, which was an equivalent, because they even played state footy back then. The Victorians wouldn't play them, so they played this bit of a novelty city versus country game. And in that game, I tore my quadricep and ended up missing the whole rest of the year with it, pretty much. So it was a 15-week injury because I didn't manage it very well, and it's my first injury. And so it was a really it wasn't the best preparation to go over to Melbourne, and I was pretty scarred a little bit in terms of confidence in the leg. But yeah, got over there. Thought that North Melbourne were going to be really good. Had some really good young players, including people like Wayne Carey and Glenn Archer and all those sort of fellas. And, in the end, it ended up being like that. It was a great experience. In many respects, you go over there thinking it's going to be bigger and better, but, in a lot of ways, Norwood had better facilities. They were, really well coached. We had great coach Neil Baum at the time, and we had some unbelievable players that, could have walked into a lot of VFL sides or AFL sides in the end. Michael Aish, Keith Thomas had already been over there, but it was certainly a different time going on over there.
Were you a little bit disappointed that the Crows didn't come knocking?
No, I'd already been picked.
Well, actually, I was fortunate because I one of the things that happened when the Crows first came in was that they could annul 10 players who were already drafted, and I was over in Melbourne, and I was about to sign with North Melbourne, and I said to Bob Ansett, who was their chairman at the time, look, I just wanted to speak to my grandparents. Malcolm mentioned before I was pretty close to them, that I was going to sign. And by the time I got home, there was a message from Bob Hammond to give him a call. And I had no idea about the Crows at that stage, but he said, look, don't sign anything. We're gonna put you on our list. And so I sort of held back, and I weighed them both up. But it was in the end, I'd been on a couple of trips away with the North Melbourne boys, and like I said, I thought they were going to be good. You know, there was a bit of uncertainty still around the Crows, who was going to be coach, and a few other things. And in the end, I thought, well, look, I'll go over and play a few years over there, and if I can come back and I do well, then I might be able to get back to the Crows down the track as well. So in the end, that never really it came to fruition, but that was the thought process. But yeah, in some respects, some days I think, geez, I wish I'd played for the Crows in their first year. It would have been nice.
Yeah, I was wondering then. I did think of the bit where they were allowed to pick 10 players. I was trying to work out where you were at with that, and you've explained it. I was thinking you're 1 year out in that way, and then I've realised no, you would have been eligible in that way.
In the mix. Yeah.
And then. And then you've ended up at Collingwood, and it would be remiss if we didn't give your favourite Collingwood supporter in Luke Reynolds a mention. I did let him know that you were going to be on the show tonight. He was quite keen about that, Bart.
He's a great man, Luke. He's a ripper. He remembers my time at Collingwood. Must have been a die-hard Collingwood supporter.
He's a die-hard, yes.
No, look, it was a great experience again. I talked about perhaps North, in their facilities, and then you go to a club like Collingwood where it's just another level, and the amount of support. You go to a game every week, you're sort of 60,000 plus. It was a great experience. Once again, I was disappointed that I played one game, and then effectively the week after I got shin splints and a stress fracture in my foot, and then missed the next sort of 10 weeks, and that was pretty much it.
Yeah, you didn't have much luck with your injuries overall, Bart.
No, I was a bit of a crock. It wasn't great with soft tissue injuries, and so as soon as they started, that was sort of it. And then basically I got a few, broke a little transverse process in my back, and also did some like I said before, stress fractures. So I was pretty high maintenance, mate. I wasn't very resilient.
Playing over there on some of the iconic grounds, did you get to play at some of the local suburban grounds like Windy Hill and Victoria Park? And
Yeah, absolutely. So that was great. To be able to play at Windy Hill and Victoria Park was another one. Arden Street wasn't. They'd pretty much finished up playing there, so we didn't play any footy there. But the MCG and Waverley was still around then. Waverley was like a beautiful ground. Long drive out there, but it was a beautiful
Arctic
surface.
Park. I hear.
Arctic Park.
I've been at a game where Norwood have won at Waverley against the Western Bulldogs. It was a great night.
Bulldogs, it would have been the old Footscray back then, I'd say.
Yep.
Those Foster's Cup games. I mean, Norwood were quite often getting through to the quarterfinals and those sort of things. It was a great thrill to be able to play in, like you say, all those older sort of grounds, and Western Oval. They were all still operating, and then slowly, one by one, through the wisdom of the AFL. And I suppose in reality, I didn't get to see the outer and the facilities in the outer, which probably weren't great, particularly for women. So that those days are well and truly behind us now. But it was a great experience to be able to play on them. And I tell you, some of them were pretty hostile. It wasn't when you think about Moorabbin and running out there, and they used to have the races, which were just covered by wire, and people would be just standing all over them, and giving you some pretty colourful advice, and maybe throwing a few fluids on you as well. So it was pretty interesting back then. That's for sure.
How would you compare, say, some of those grounds to some of the SANFL grounds, the iconic SANFL grounds?
Yeah, look, they probably had a little bit more history around them. I think they were certainly equipped for bigger crowds, bigger stands, but they were all similar in terms of dimensions and so forth. Nothing's going to be bigger than Central's Oval out there. But, they were great experiences. And then you'd sort of, if you played at Victoria Park, you could almost see the club rooms afterwards, and the club rooms had elevators in them, and, they were big operations.
And then, Bart, after the Collingwood bit, you had a few games with the Uni Blues, mate?
I did, yes. So I actually, when I first started, or finished up, I went out to old Melburnians. I had a friend who was out there, and he dragged me out there. And I played maybe a year, but with Melbourne, it's one of those places, particularly if you've grown up in the country over here and you sort of, you don't like sitting in a car for too long, that if you don't play or live on the same side as your training venue, it can be a bit of an arduous task getting to and from training. So I only lasted about a year and a half, and then I also got quite a bad kidney disease at the time, and so that sort of took me out of footy for a year. And then when I came back, I was living around the corner from Uni Blues, and just went out there and managed to have a few games, and had a few games with the current CEO of the AFL.
Yes, I was wondering that.
So,
yeah.
So Gil was terrific, and so I think we played in a state team. Although I got injured the week before, so I didn't end up playing it, but we both got picked in it for the amateurs, and he was a good footballer, Gil.
Lucky you're not a horse. Dogs finally broke down once, Bart.
I know. It was terrible. Yeah, no, I wasn't all that. You wouldn't put much money on me, that's for sure.
And then you came back to Norwood in 2000 for a bit.
Yep. So pretty much hadn't played footy for a few years, because I went via London and worked over there for 12 months, and then I came back and I gave. I just sort of thought I arrived back in Australia in January, I think, and excuse me, gave David Walker a call. I'd sort of kept myself reasonably fit on the way back, and said, "Look, mate, do you mind if I come out and have a run around and see if I can finish my career where I sort of started?" And he was good enough to let me do that, which was very generous of him. Got once again played reasonably well in the twos at the start, and then I rolled my ankle and missed 6 or 7 weeks, and then managed to sort of play the last 10 games in the league side. So that was a great thrill, and great to be back involved with the club.
And you've since then you've had a bit of coaching with Pembroke and Glenunga as well, on memory.
Not well, Glenunga only with my lads. So,
that's right. Yeah.
Go to the mighty under 6, 7, 8s, and 9s. I think probably up till they were 10 years old, and then I gave them a reprieve. But no, I love doing that. I love coaching the younger ones. And I had a good time at Pembroke as well. That was my old school. I had an opportunity to sort of help out a guy called Chris Mahaffey, who a lot of people would know, involved in amateur footy. And then Chris's health wasn't the best, and so I sort of took over from him as more of a help out, and then did that for probably a year and a half, and staved off relegation twice. So it wasn't the best, but look, in terms of we had a young group coming through, and I certainly enjoyed working with them. They were good lads.
You've got your photos up in the pavilion at Haslam, and I reckon you've knocked Raf Sturck off I reckon Raf Sturck's got you knocked off for the worst photo up there, mate. So it's yes.
Well, that's good. It's good. No, it was a great time. I really enjoyed my time at Pembroke, both in the old Scholars sort of area and also as a kid growing up.
Did you have any other aspirations to follow on with your coaching, maybe at a SANFL level? Or?
No, I think what it taught me, I always thought that I'd be a reasonable coach, but when you actually go through the process, there's a lot more to it, and it was probably one of those things that just identified that, coaching probably wasn't at that level, wasn't necessarily for me. So, I'd always, like I said, felt that I could contribute in a football program, but once I got the bug out of the system, I suppose, and now just happy watching others do it.
And give us a rundown. So you're now on the board at Norwood and of the football director. Give us a rundown on your roles there, and we'll expand a little bit on the film, etc. After.
Yep. Yeah, so I've been on the board as the footy director for 6 years. I sort of took over from Michael Taylor when he finished up. And so, look, the role itself is pretty much all-encompassing in terms of footy. That you want to make sure that all the programs, whether they be the 13s, 14s, and 15s, have got the right people involved and teaching the right things and heading in the right direction. So I think I'm really, really happy with where we're at with those programs. It's also, since I've been there, we've had the women's program introduced, and we've just appointed a new coach in that respect, a guy called Brad Snell, who's doing a terrific job. So it's all things football. So who's in the roles? What direction are we going to take in terms of recruiting style? Although when I say that, I'm certainly not. What I do is just oversee it. I don't get involved directly in making decisions around players, and that I shouldn't. And that's decisions for Jade. But certainly in terms of the type of players and our goal around perhaps getting younger players to the club, I think that's a good direction, and the athletic profiles of those players is an important decision as well.
And last year's premiership was a shot in the arm that Norwood needed.
Absolutely, yeah, Peter. Look, to be perfectly honest, I think it was maybe a year earlier than certainly I expected. I think we're in great hands. We've got a super coach in Jade Rawlings. He's brought in a really what I would call a final style of footy, so a really contested style of footy, and just the way that he's built relationships, not just with the players but throughout the club, and building a really strong culture. So in summary, I think it was maybe a year before, but we'll certainly take it. It was a great experience to go through, and we've got a good young list that I think will be better, not just for having another year under Twig, but also because I think we've recruited well again. We've picked up Jackson Callow and Jack Saunders and Matt Ling and amongst some others, including a couple more Tassie boys. Yeah. So I think we've recruited really well. But having said that, I think that competition is a sensational competition, and I think Malcolm, you attest to that. It's a terrific competition that gets better year on year, and I think Glenelg and North and Sturt and all those other clubs will be around the mark again in the South. And there's not an easy game in the SANFL.
Well, I was with Andrew Capel a couple of weeks ago, and he said, "Come on, let's do our final five," and I'll be honest, we were humming. Both of us had only West Adelaide as the outsiders in that way, and they did beat us last. And they were reasonable towards the end of last year. So,
Correct.
I think there is a fair bit of depth there. Now,
absolutely, and just on that, Malcolm, one of the things that we've got to be really, really cognizant of is that we played in, I think seven games, or maybe even 8 games that were decided by less than 7 points.
Yeah.
Of which we won 5. Now, if we'd lost another 2 of those, we don't get a double chance.
Yes.
And so, it's we've really got to be mindful that we certainly didn't dominate the competition. We played really good footy, and we won the games that we needed to win when we did it, and we're certainly a developing group. But the competition and just for that, Woodville, West Orange will be they'll be far better again next year, and they've been strong for a long time. So. Look, it's going to be a really good season again of SANFL footy.
And you've launched your movie career this week, Bart, too. The movie Fortis. Go through that experience, Bart, a little bit there with and then I'll give you my couple of highlights.
I'm looking forward to hearing your critique. But it was the brainchild of James Fantasia, who, Fan is just such a great person for the Norwood Footy Club. He lives and breathes it. He's supported the club all his life. And him alongside Paul DiIulio, who I think is the best president going around, the amount of work that they do for the footy club is incredible. So I just thought I'd sort of add that before I get onto the documentary. But as I said, it was his brainchild. He came up with the idea of the week of the grand final, basically getting a young lad in called Miles McEwen, whose father James is on the board with me, and he's a very talented young man, and he basically just followed us around, and we have a regular catch up, myself, Paul, James, Twig, and last year the footy director, football manager, Rob Harding, and so we do that
and
every
Mark Robinson.
Every Monday we catch up, and so he was there the first time when we caught up on Monday, and then stayed throughout the whole week, and got access on grand final day to everything, and as a result, he's put this documentary together, which everyone was saying it was going to be good, but I was really surprised at just how good it was. I thought it was an excellent production. Except for my bits, that was the downside.
No, I'm unfortunate. I've just got to give you the news. You've missed out the Academy Award. I think Wolf Blass has got that sewn up well and truly.
Well, I was never going to beat him. I was never going to beat him. He was outstanding. He was outstanding.
Look, my highlights out of it was, I think it showed the genuine care, passion and empathy Twig's got. You can see why he's so well respected by the group and why there's such been a buy-in into the system where we weren't the best side and still managed, to win the premiership. And I think that really came through pretty strongly. And I was really glad that Twig made the point that Matty Panos, he mentioned about our culture with Richmond, and he also mentioned that Matty Panos is as good as any player he has been involved with in coaching and dealing with. And for those of us around the traps who are just stunned that Matthew Panos hasn't been on an AFL list since Bass basically told Port to in 2014, that he is the best player in the comp. And yeah, I enjoyed that bit. Look, I love just Wolf Blass's passion. Let's be honest. That was the highlight. It was funny, but it was genuine. It was quite like Paul was doing very well not to Matt Cordelio next to him to keep a straight face. They were my highlights out of it. I didn't think it was quite as inner circle as as I said, and it can't be. But for mine, they were my highlights.
Yeah, look, I think your reflection on Matty Panos and, for that matter, Jade, showing his vulnerabilities, and I think that's a fantastic thing, and you can see why his playing group gravitate to him, and so articulate as well, and so I think that's definitely a takeaway. And as you say, the great man Wolf Blass, incredible benefactor to the club, and what he's been able to do, which is can't be underestimated, the way what he's provided back to not only our supporters but our players, our club, our administration, everything, just in terms of the facility, and having someone of his profile being so enthused about being a Norwood supporter. He openly admits that this is his club, and he wants to support Norwood rather than potentially AFL and so forth. So that's such an amazing thing for him to do for us, and we'll be forever grateful. And your reflection on Matty Panos is absolutely 100% right. It's amazing that he's not on an AFL list, or didn't play or get more AFL opportunities, because he's a complete professional in everything he does. The way that he's brought himself back, you'd remember the game his first game back. I jokingly said to him, can I have sort of 4 goals and 20 possessions? And he's probably, he certainly gave me the 4 goals, and he probably had more than 20 possessions. But that's a reflection on how well he prepares and just his talent. He's a special player and special leader at our club.
And it was no cute show. It wasn't a coincidence that we won 8 out of the 9 games Matt played last year.
Yeah, absolutely. Because a lot of those games just take a little bit of poise at times, someone to finish and, kick a goal when we needed a goal kicked. And, that's really important. And everyone talks about the goal, but, Matt would be the first one to say, what about Jacob Kennelly's block? And I think that's the really important thing from a club, that we've continued to focus on those things. And internally, that's been given just as much kudos as Matty's goal. Maybe not externally, but certainly internally, that those are the things that are what we call fortisacks. They're just so important. Very
much so. And look, Nunny being injured last year, and Jacob Kennelly stepped up. And look, those of us around knew that after Luke Valenti, we'd heard Luke Valenti is brilliant, and he is the best leader I've been involved with as a junior, heavy involvement with him. But then Jacob following up him at Ross Trevor, and there'd been really good feedback about him as a leader. And then he just stood up, and he was really the football leader. And he consistently did things like the blocks like that. It was really, there was one game afterwards, and I said, geez, that's a good block for Javo. And he said, geez, you do watch, Malcolm. And,
Yeah.
stuff like that, which the average person might miss. And because we've all watched the King's goal, I think I'm up to about 8,576,332. We've all watched it so many times, you really notice that. But that's Jacob all over.
Yeah, no, it's a really good observation, and he's a guy that leads on the field, as well as anyone, and along with Matty Nunn, who's a great leader, and so we're where we were sort of ahhing probably 3 years ago. Where's our crop of good leaders going to come from? Well, it's amazing when you give them the opportunity how much they can flourish. And now, along with Jack Hurd and Harry Boyd and Declan Hamilton and all those sort of guys, we're really developing some strong leaders. And you need that, because they're the ones that win you those games when you need them to win them, and when they're close as well. So, no, I think it's a really good observation on your part.
So you made mention that obviously Jade Rowlands is or Twig is the man to steer these guys. Were you involved in getting him to the parade?
Well, yeah, I can put my hand on heart. Yes, I was. Yes, so, yes. We went. So 6 years ago, I sort of on the roll. So, and probably what was it now? Jade's in his third year. So, we parted ways with Jared Cotton. What was it? 3 years ago, and so as a result of that, we went to market, and fortunate enough to have someone of Jade's quality come up. There was a lot of logistics that still needed to go through to get him over the line, but yeah, we were pretty keen to get him, and so pleased that we ended up being able to do that. So yeah, we're very lucky to have him.
Let's not miss what Jade's done himself with his family, still being back in Tasmania. It's been quite extraordinary, really. He actually lived with Stephen Marshall for a while, as well. So
yeah, massive. Yeah.
He's been
exactly right. But when he first came over, well, I think it's a good little story behind it. Because I think Paul got Stephen to give him a call while he was still premier, and welcome him into the club. And at the same time, he said, "Oh, where are you staying?" And Twig said, "Oh, well, I haven't got anywhere to stay. I'm still trying to work it all out." And the premier at the time sort of offered his place for a week, and so and funnily enough, I think it was just when all the lockdown started as well. So Twig was sort of in the war room as all the information's coming through and so forth. And it was very, very generous of Stephen to offer that. But you're right. I mean, it wasn't easy, and it hasn't been easy for Twig. But he's such a pro. He's developed really strong relationships. With all the people at Norwood, but fortunately this year he's brought Sally and the kids, Ed and Macy and Millie, all over. So he's far more settled now, and looks forward to sort of those kids are all off to school and all being pretty settled, which is great. And
he really hammers how he's really Norwood Football Club. He's here. I think if he actually got offered an AFL coaching job, he would knock it back. He's really bought into the Norwood Football Club. Yeah,
right from the word go. He's a self-confessed football nuffy, so a bit like you and me, Malcolm, and potentially probably you, Peter.
Yeah, absolutely.
But he knew of Norwood and its history, and can remember watching. Back in the old days, Malcolm, when they probably would have televised the grand finals in Tasmania as a kid, growing up and watching them. So he knows all about every club throughout Australia, whether it's in Western Australia or Northern Territory, just because he loves footy, he loves watching footy, he loves analysing footy, and that's why he's so good at what he does.
I think my observations of Twig is a bit like Bass. They live and breathe the Norwood Footy Club, and it's part of that new age coaching that it is all about the members, and they want to get them involved as much as possible, and make it about them as well.
Absolutely, it's about building relationships. Is like the number one key thing, and that's what he talked about when he first got interviewed, and that's the way he's basically lived and breathed since he's got over here. It's about building relationships and developing a culture that he can be proud of. And I think it's probably a reflection on what these guys get exposed to at AFL. You can't, Jade was in in the AFL system for a long, long time, and would have been exposed to so many different things and so many great people as well. And he's brought a lot of that stuff. What he can implement, because they're not full-time players, but he's certainly been able to implement a really strong program in a relatively short period of time, in 2 years.
Yeah, I think he also likes being out of the AFL, out of that AFL rat race to some thing, and you're not just a person. You're actually he communicates with everybody, and you're actually, and that's where I prefer SANFL. You're actually a member at Norwood, and there's connections there where you're not member number 1478763 like you are in AFL go. But that's me. I admit that.
Yeah, look, I think that's a pretty fair observation as well. I think he's a Tassie boy originally, so living in Adelaide's it's not as busy obviously as Melbourne, but it's a little bit busier than Devonport, and he can get his parents over regularly, and so hopefully that's the plan. My dream is that he loves Adelaide, and Sally loves Adelaide, and they're very settled, and they, it's certainly a good start from winning the premiership last season. So yeah, and the other thing about that is that I think he's a senior coach as well. That's his passion. He wants his own side, and that's why he's been so good, because he's been able to mould the whole program, and he gets involved with the under-16 program. He gets involved in the 18s. He wants to be involved in critiquing everything about our footy program, which is invaluable, and that's what you want from your senior coach as well.
Definitely.
Well, it sounds like all the pieces of the puzzle are coming together, hopefully this year, for a successful back-to-back assault.
We certainly hope so, Peter. Fingers crossed we could do with another premiership down at the parade. So we're hopeful. We're sort of working hard, and we've got some good pieces in place. We think we're headed in the right direction.
And where you brought Jack Hurd up earlier, you knew that he was very well coached in Sapsaza for East Adelaide as well, Bart. So yes.
Who's that?
Jack Hurd. I had him for a couple. I actually originally had Jack Hurd when he was in grade 2 for Auskick, and that's where the whole Rewalt bit came from with his blonde hair. And that's where he'd wear the St Kilda number 12 Guernsey. So that's where the Rewalt bit back actually comes from, right back from grade 2. So,
right. Yeah. You identified talent at an early age, Malcolm.
I still really rate his brother Finn. I'm not giving up on Finn yet.
No one is. I think and Finn's a little bit bigger bodied, so they just take a little bit of extra time. But he's still young, and he just needs a bit of continuity, a bit of luck with his injuries, and a bit of confidence. But he started to play some good footy towards the back end of last year as well. So he's going to be good, Finn.
All right, mate. Greatly appreciated.
Thanks,
Bart.
Mate, for that.
No worries at all.
I'm sure you'll still be waiting by the phone for the phone call from the academy directors as well, Bart.
No, definitely. Thank you, Malcolm. I appreciate your support on that, mate. But I won't be waiting on the phone.
One last bit with Bart. Let's remember too. So with Justin, when the AFL women's games first came, and we've got the game at Norwood Oval, and I've turned around, sitting with Justin in the stand, I've turned around to Justin and gone, now, if I'd said to you 5 years ago that the next time Norwood Oval will be packed as women's football, or local cricket is getting 45,000, 50,000 crowds at Adelaide Oval, which one would you have considered the more bizarre statement? And Bart's gone, it's a bloody good point, Malcolm. I'm not really sure on that one. Yeah. So, yes.
Yeah, no, it's certainly, and look, mate, you went to that game on Friday night. I thought it was the best game of women's footy I've seen at SANFL level. It was outstanding. So, look, and I think we've got a really good coach in that area as well with Brad Snell. So I think they're headed in the right direction.
Good numbers at the game too.
It was a beautiful night. It was a great contest. A little bit of aggression from both the teams, which is nice to see as well. And I thought the quality of footy, you can just start to see. Their hands are getting better. Some of the overhead marking was terrific, and it was a great spectacle. Great spectacle.
I thought that was a significant improvement.
Yeah,
I really did.
Yeah, no, it was outstanding. So
hopefully that game's the benchmark for the remainder of the season.
Yeah, absolutely, Peter. Yeah, I think if we can get more games like that, I just think more and more people will come. And it's a good night down at Norwood Oval and having a Coopers and watching any footy.
Well, sounds like a plan.
I think our bar trade was pretty reasonable on the night too. It was probably better than a lot of league games because of the weather. So
absolutely. Yep. No, so if we can get a couple of 30+ days on when the gather round happens, then that'll be perfect.
Yep.
Well, mate, thank you very much.
The bar will be sitting over.
Yeah, absolutely. Mate, thank you very much for letting us in a little bit on your career earlier on, but obviously your role as the Norwood Football Director and what's going on down at the parade at the moment. I will definitely be there this year supporting the mighty Redlegs, and I know my co-host here, Malcolm, he'll drag me along if I'm not.
Exactly.
That'd be good. I'll introduce you. It'd be nice to say hello. Obviously, I'll see you, Malcolm, and I'll say hello to you, Peter, when you come up.
Absolutely, mate.
Thanks for the chat.
You're welcome, mate.
Thanks, Bart.
Okay, take care.
Thanks, mate.
Liking this podcast? Please like, rate, and subscribe.
Welcome back to Game On. We've just finished speaking with Justin Staritski, and he gave us obviously a little bit of insight into his career, but his work at the Norwood Footy Club. Yeah,
as director, as in charge of footy director at Norwood now, and a bit of fun stirring him up about his role in the film Fortis. He's waiting by his phone for the Academy Award nominees to come in.
I think he might be waiting a little bit longer than most, but Wolf Blass took the honours on that occasion. But
3 votes.
3 votes. But we thank Justin for his time tonight, and we look forward to hopefully him directing the Norwood Footy Club to a back-to-back premiership this year.
Exactly.
Liking this podcast? Please like, rate, and subscribe. Happy days.
And for Happy Days today, we're going to stick with the Nord theme. Michael H., happy birthday this week.
I actually made sure that I rang him as well to wish him happy birthday. It was a couple of days later. I actually rang him today for another matter as well. So, good chat to H today. Look,
2-time premiership player, 82-84, McGarry medal in 81, 307 games, 449 goals. We've had him on our podcast. We wish him a big happy birthday.
Yeah, I just wanted a bit of health advice off him today, I'll be honest. And he was great.
Fantastic. Mate, we'll stick with the happy birthdays. David Pittman, happy birthday.
The very dry sense of I'd love to get Pitto on. I doubt whether we will, but he's a very, very, very funny man, David.
Yep.
In his own way.
2-time premiership player with the Crows, 131 games, 34 goals, 5 games for SA. Drafted by Essendon in 1989, but traded to the Crows in 91, in that period that we were talking about with Justin earlier, and debuted in 92. And we can't leave out that famously got the spray from Malcolm Blight for the pitiful Pittman at the MCG, which was a bit unfortunate, but maybe it drove him to bigger and better things in 97.
Likes talking about anymore. I'd rather go about his role on Stuart Lowe in 97.
Yep.
Playing as a key defender. Played most of his footy obviously as a ruckman.
Yeah.
But, he stood Tony Lockett in the 98 final series. Mm-hmm. So he was flexible and a vital player in the Crows' 2 premierships.
Doing a bit of research there, I did notice that he did play down back a little bit, and that did surprise me a little bit, knowing that you knew him for being on the ball and rucking most of the time. But, flexibility is great, and good Nord boy as well.
Yeah, no, and he was very good at that in defence. He's pretty footy smart, Pitto, and he's been involved. He's assistant coach at Port's flag in 04.
Yep.
No, respect him greatly.
Absolutely, and like I said, we'd love to get him on at some stage if we could, but we'll see how we go. Mate, cricket, 2010, the man we talked about last week with Daryl Harper, Sachin Tendulkar, scores the first double century in one-day international cricket.
Yes, and we did speak briefly after that about Peter McIntyre. He's away for a couple of weeks, but I reckon we'll get him in about 3 weeks.
Fantastic, and Sachin Tendulkar, not only a gentleman, but really the GOAT. One of the GOATs. He's on that Mount Rushmore that I talk about on previous occasions with other sports. I'd say Sachin's definitely there.
Once he was in, he was really in. You virtually felt like you might as well go to might as well go to the beach for a couple of hours, whatever.
Come back and he's got 150, 160 and he's still
Martin
going.
Crowe was similar like that, where Brian Lara would cart you, but you always felt you were in a chance of getting him out. Once Tendulkar was in, he was in.
Yep.
Bed and breakfast.
Absolutely. And, still doing some really, really good things. We move on to golf. 2021, Tiger Woods crashes his car in South Los Angeles, injuring both his legs.
Yeah.
Tragic set of circumstances that led to that, but he's back on the tour. Played a couple of rounds last week, didn't make the cut, but good to see him out on the golf course.
Yeah, and you wonder what could have been. Like what happened off course, obviously, with his life.
Yep.
He's still got well and true claims as the greatest, but he could have been on another level again. So
I know, obviously, at the moment he's probably struggling he will struggle to walk 72 holes. I know they don't let golf carts, but for players, but you sort of wonder whether if they could prolong it, it could be very, very helpful for the PGA if he's still able to play.
It only helped numbers.
Absolutely.
Attendings.
But then again, his son is up and coming as well, and I think that's a bit of a priority for him as well. So, all right, we'll scoot into the big finish.
Yes.
Extra time. Big finish.
All right, mate, we're going to stick with the AFL tonight. We did the cricket last week where we bookended them a little bit, so we'll do the AFL footy this week. But my first question, will Brisbane go one better and earn a grand final appearance this year?
Oh, it's a hard one because Adams getting injured is vital for them. So whether they're going to be good enough down back, and that, yes, they're going to have plenty of the ball going their way because Ashcroft, getting him in and Dunkley means the ball's going to go their way. So let's toss a coin. I'm going to go no.
Okay. I'm a bit on the fence on this one, but I am going to make a decision either way. I reckon this year is their year. I think they've been around the mark. I just think that there's just something that's going to drive them that little bit further this year.
I think this year's if they don't get there this year, the window's starting. Lockie Neal will be another year.
Yep.
So, it'll be interesting.
Yeah, I just think that this year is going to be the one that they have to do it, and I reckon they will. Can Took Miller win this year's Brownlow medal?
One, he's hurt a hamstring, and we wait and see on how bad that is. They're saying he'll be okay round one and all that. Let's face it, that's said about everyone this time of year.
He had a great year last year.
Oh, he had a fantastic year. Whether they're going to win enough games and improve, they get Max King back. Not Max King. Ben King to get him back makes them right. That changes them dramatically.
Yep. But there's not a lot of people that are going to take votes off of him, and if he has the breakout year that he did last year, he could go pretty well this year coming.
Oh, look, he's certainly a chance that I'll go no purely on the stats wise that. You're better off to back someone else out of 300 players than one. So.
Absolutely. And, I'm no on that one as well. I think he'll have a really good year, and I think he's starting to get noticed by the umpires a little bit more. And, health and fitness is obviously one thing, but being in a reasonably supportive team, they're going to struggle a little bit, so it's going to be interesting.
Of course, his highlight of the year will be playing on Nord Oval, you would think. So, yes.
Why not?
Exactly.
All right.
North Melbourne, mate, how will they go?
Yeah. Question is, are they going to struggle under Clarkson this year? That's probably my first doubt about North Melbourne, because he's obviously got to rebuild the list that he wants.
Yeah.
Second one is, I just don't think that they've got the cattle to improve this year.
Look, they're coming from a long way back.
They are.
And that's probably what needs to be remembered. There's few things are looking a bit better, like Will Phillips, who's had, number 3 draft choice, Heckler fever, didn't play, Ben Cunnington back after testicular cancer.
Yep.
So there's a few things there are looking better, but I'd still hold the phone a bit at the moment.
Yeah, I think they're going to struggle as well, mate. Could Port Adelaide have an interim coach by the mid-season bye?
They could, but I don't think they will. I think they'll start pretty well. had a look at the first 5, and I reckon Port will win 4 of the first 5.
I've got Port winning probably 3 out of the first 5. So, and there's going to be a couple of very interesting games in there. The Brisbane one, round 1's going to be an absolute belter, really, at the end of the day.
Huge game.
Yeah, and if you're 1-0 or 0-1, it's going to be very interesting. Obviously, we talked about Port Adelaide, but Beveridge is probably under a little bit of.
Yeah, you would think so, but I think he might have signed an extension. We'll check that out. During this week.
Yeah, but hey, our mate at St Kilda, Brett Ratton, signed an extension and got clipped pretty much all 90 days later. So
it's embarrassing incompetence, though. Yeah, Beveridge still has got a flag under the belt there.
He does have a little bit more currency.
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, obviously, with the raft of new coaches this year, you've got to say that they're probably the 2 biggest ones that are under the most amount of pressure.
Yep. Will Ashcroft, mate, will he dominate?
Will he win the Rising Star? Yes, he will. I don't think I need to flip a coin on that one at all. No, he stays healthy. I think he's going to get great game time, and I think he's going to be just what Brisbane need to light it up.
Oh, he'll be a Walsh sort of season as well. Sam Walsh, when Carlton was his first year. And, look, Brisbane were adamant that if he'd been available, they would have played him last year.
Yep.
So, I think he'll have a year like Dacos did.
And I think Ashcroft's got a little bit more support around him. I mean, geez, you sit there with Lockie Neal
and
Dunkley, and you just sit under those guys and watch what they do. Yeah. And I think he's in a better place than what Walsh was at Carlton.
Yeah.
And finally, we're going to see a Twilight Grand Final become a regular fixture from now on.
No, I don't reckon we will.
No, still day grand final?
I think there's still a fair bit of opposition against the Twilight bit. Yeah. I admit I prefer the day grand final. But, it'll be interesting to see what happens.
I think they're looking at all avenues. Again, flip of the coin, but I reckon it's still going to remain, while Gill is in the seat, it'll still remain a day grand final.
Yeah. Yep. I'm on the same page.
Absolutely. All right, mate, we'll leave it there. It's been one hell of a hot day and one hell of a bigger episode. We just want to give a little bit of a shout out that we are looking to visit some local clubs over the next couple of months and do a live broadcast from those clubs. So please get in touch with us and put your club forward for that. And we're obviously trying to get to a couple of SANFL clubs as well.
Yep, certainly will.
And we'll review the SANFL over the coming weeks and talk to a couple of SANFL players as well.
Definitely.
All right, mate. Thank you, folks, and we will see you next week.
In this crazy world we live in, we all need the distraction. Enjoying the show? Like, rate, and subscribe. Hook up and connect with us on social media at Sportscast SA. We'll see you next time on Game On.